This happened to my roommate and I 2 years ago, when we drove into the national forest just outside of the town we live in. We go to this small college in New England about 3 hours from any major city. For context, this forest has quite a few urban legends surrounding it, and the local community, although they do go there often, have a lot of superstition about how to be safe while there. I had just broken up with my partner, and my roommate could sense I was feeling down. Finals were just around the corner, so she decided to help me get my mind off things and suggested we go to a nice spot she found last week and just chill and de-stress. We took a couple of beers with us and drove up to this secluded spot in the forest. From the moment we left the main asphalt road in the forest, I saw a couple of things that unsettled me. You could see the abandoned houses of a ghost town from the higher ground the road was on, and we saw this old doll hanging from a rope on a tree. Creepy stuff. We didn't give it a second thought and just kept on driving. We got to a clearing and parked our cars behind some trees, popped open the back of our SUV, and started just talking and playing music. About 10 minutes later, 2 cars appeared from the road and parked in the clearing. My friend didn't pay them any attention. Instead, she kept talking, but as I was facing them from where I was sat, I couldn't stop seeing what they did. A guy popped out of each car, talked for a few minutes, and then I saw them take out a long object covered in a dark plastic bag from the back of one of their cars. This is when I noticed that these guys were armed, and not like shotguns, which I see often in this town, but handguns, and they started lighting the bag on fire. I told my friend to get down. She turned around and saw them for the first time. Black smoke was rising from the bag, and between trying to keep my head down and steal glances at them, I saw one of them take out a second object, and I heard them shoot it right before they set it on fire. I don't know how long my friend and I were lying there in silence, but it was definitely enough to let the terror sink in and whisper to each other how much we loved each other in case this was what we thought it was. At some point I looked up and saw they were pointing at our car and saw them walking into the woods, maybe trying to follow our tracks or trying to look for us. All I know is that right then and there I told my friend to jump into the driver's seat and make a run for it. I shut the back door, and between that and the car starting up, the guys heard it and started running towards us, then ran towards one of their cars and hopped in. We went over a hill and driving way above what was safe for dirt roads on a hillside, but we managed to lose them. We drove to a neighboring town and roamed around for a while, just to make sure no one was following us before we went back to our dorm. That day we tried to make fun of the whole situation and got really drunk, before finally breaking down and crying from knowing we had seen something we weren't supposed to. We were at first terrified of telling anyone, but eventually did tell officers on campus who contacted the police. But they never found anything. I'm a park ranger. My regular shift consists of handling the entrance booth, cleaning the park and assisting tourists and guests. One summer, one of my supervisors asks me if I'm willing to work overtime for a night shift. Me being a broke high school student would do anything to earn a bit of cash. I took the opportunity and was put on the night shift with a few other rangers. A few on patrol and a few near the entrance of the gate. I wasn't given much in terms of tools, a radio, a flashlight, and a notepad. My mobile phone was locked away in my locker as usual, and we weren't allowed to carry any sort of firearm. At 6 p.m. we'd usually close the park by this time, as no more guests were allowed through the main gate. The only exceptions were emergency services. I was stationed in the ranger station until I switched to the booth at 1 a.m. It was boring. You'd usually just sit in a small booth with a 180 dark-tinted windows and expect nothing. You'd hear semi-trucks go by every now and then, and those cicadas in the forest. The fog layers were usually thick. You could hardly see anything. There was barely anything you could do. I was so bored, so I went outside and shined my flashlight around randomly. And, in the glimpse of an eye, the light from my flashlight captured a human-y figure in the pine trees, I thought I was hallucinating because I was so sleepy. I took a brief pause to process what I had just encountered, and looked again, and the figure vanished completely. So I contacted one of the nearby rangers to investigate it, over the dead radio silence. A few minutes passed and the ranger finally arrived to investigate. He walked over and found nothing, no footprints, nothing. I sent out a be on the lookout call to rangers in the park, just in case the person may have run off. They searched the area, but found nothing and told me I was just seeing things. I knew I wasn't because the figure was so real. I soon accepted that perhaps I was seeing things, and the rest of the night was eerie. The forest was completely silent, which was scary to say the least. It scared me to a point I wouldn't use the toilet for the entire night. Sunrise, and the day shift comes in. Me and the night shift crew head back into the ranger station and end our shift and clock in for the day. I ask one of the rangers which believes in the paranormal, and she mentions that 18 hikers/mountain climbers lost their lives during a 6.0 magnitude earthquake in the park. She told me it was probably one of the deceased trying to make contact with me. It sent shivers down my spine, and still does when I think about it from time to time. From that night on, I would still take night shifts, but never encountered anything like that again. Here's one of my stories from when I lived off the grid in the forest of western North Carolina. Some friends and I lived in these small shacks, essentially a shed with a loft, that were very close together. Living in such primal and close conditions breeds a kind of deep, trusting friendship that you can't get from living anywhere else. So naturally, we did almost everything together. By our little semicircle of houses, there was a railroad track that if you followed it south would lead to a waterfall. This waterfall in particular is where everyone would go to get high. It was a normal night, humid, sometime in early July, and a group of about 6 friends and I, Laura, Andy, Nick, and some of Andy's friends that I didn't know that well but recognized, decided to walk out to this waterfall in the dark. I was the only sober one in the group, so I felt a higher sense of responsibility for everyone and was therefore on edge and hyper-aware of our surroundings. Others would walk faster or slower or stop altogether in the group, so it was natural and expected that we wouldn't be able to see everyone at the same time. Andy was in rare form though. When Laura had to stop to pee, he came out of the bushes and scared her, and then ran off ahead behind the rest of the group. This annoyed both me and Laura since it was such a clear invasion of privacy and unnecessarily spooked in the already spooky night. Laura and I eventually got into where we could see Andy again, but he was walking by himself and then slipped back into the bushes without even looking at us. Dismissing him as just being high, we kept moving forwards, still not back with the whole group yet, and we realized that Andy has followed in behind us, just far enough away that we can only see his silhouette. Finally, we catch up with the rest of the group and see that all of us are accounted for, even Andy. We asked him how he got ahead of us and beat us to the group when he had last been seen 15 yards behind us just a minute ago. Everyone was dead silent, and Laura and I realized that whoever scared her when she peed and followed us wasn't Andy or anyone from our group. We never did make it to that waterfall.